I have with me this afternoon my colleague, the Minister of Works and Transport, who assures me he has gotten maybe half an hour of sleep at some stage. I don't believe him. I think he's gotten none. We have both just come back from the field. I have literally just gotten back from doing an air assessment, which I've been doing over the past few hours from 11:30. I touched down, I think, in Queen's Park, Savannah at about 4:25. So thank you all for your patience. As you all know, we have had some difficult weather over the past 48 hours. Fortunately, last night and for the majority of today, up to 12 noon, we were not faced with that type of difficult weather. What I can say is, and Minister Sinanan will give you the assessment that the Ministry of Works and Transport made via an air assessment this afternoon and their technical assessments of what is going on our roadways. I can give you all an assessment and a report of what I have just seen and what experienced during the day. I started off the day from Queen's Park, Savannah, flying west. I was happy to see that areas like St. Helena, even Kelly Village, at that stage, which was around 12 noon today, the water had started subsiding and people were now moving into a clean-up road. The major roads were no longer underwater. Some of the subsidiary roads remained underwater. I then went to Greenvale, where I actually spent a couple hours on the ground in Greenvale, moving from some of the houses to houses and seeing firsthand what people were dealing with. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, at times like this, it is very important that we bond together as a country and we work with our fellow citizens to do what is right for those who have just faced disaster. Today, as I walked in Greenvale, along with ODPM and others, what I saw was nothing short of heartbreaking. I walked into a number of houses from door to door, heard firsthand what people had experienced, the trauma that they had gone through when the flooding had taken place, and now the additional difficulties of trying to clean up. Citizens, we must band together. One of the things that brought a certain level of joy to me was seeing a number of persons where their co-workers had come in and were helping them. I saw men and women of the defense force, of the police force, coming together. There was one story of a guy who was living in there, a member of the Coast Guard, a seaman, and he was one of the first people there because when he got home on Friday, he actually assisted, and Minister Sinanan was on the ground there from about 2 o'clock on Saturday morning. In the morning, this Coast Guard officer is to be commended, as are many others. The story that his neighbors told, that he was able to guide the boat through the waters that were above 6, 7, 8 feet of water, and he was able to guide the first boats because he knew the area to rescue people. People showed me where they were standing on top of water tanks, etc., overnight until they were rescued, etc. But the tremendous spirit that I saw of the community coming together, persons, family, friends, work colleagues coming to help with the cleanup today, is to be commended. It showed me that there is hope, and there continues to be hope for our great nation, and that is exactly what we want to see. As a citizen, I was heartened to see that there was no creed, no race, no religion, nothing like that playing out, and that was very heartening. And I commend people. I commend all of those who have volunteered. I commend our police service, members of the police service who were not on duty over the past 48 hours. Police service, the defense force, including the Coast Guard, our fire services, even the prison services, and other normal volunteers have just come out. They've given their best. They've assisted those in need. I understand at the prisons, at the Prison Sports Club, they have been taking in persons who have been stranded. They've been assisting prison officers. Some of them have not been able to go home. I commend them for the work that they've done by continuing to man the prison service. Our fire services, they are amongst the first responders. They have been out there working hard. Our SSA has been pumping the information, gathering the information. They have been doing their work. I'd like to commend the officers who have been flying our air assets over the last few days to give us an aerial assessment is invaluable in a time like this. So what I saw in Greenvale, I'd also like to thank The HDC workers I saw coming out on a Sunday to assist. TNTech workers who were there because Greenville is all underground electricals, and they turned it off, and they are now starting to do the assessment as to what needs to happen going forward and that they can clear it, etc. All of these services, the WASA workers who are working, everybody, every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago has come together this time. I thank you. I thank you for the work you've been doing, and what heartens me is we've pulled together as a country. That's the good side. It would be remiss of me not to say that despite the pleas of the Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police, me as the Minister of National Security, and my fellow ministers and other citizens, there have been incidents of criminal elements in our society taking advantage of those who have gone through a disaster at this stage. And there have been some elements of persons even going around and picking up the destroyed appliances of people, presumably to sell as scrap iron. I stand here today as a Minister of National Security and also as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and I condemn that type of behavior. I have asked the Commissioner of Police, I've asked our Chief of Defence Staff to get more officers on the ground in some of these affected areas. In St. Helena, I was just speaking to the Chief of Defence Staff. They are continuing their rescue operations. There's still some persons in Kelly Village who are underwater. They're continuing their operations. When I continued with the aerial assessment, as I said, parts of St. Helena, the vast majority, the water had receded. I am also disappointed to announce that when I got to the Uriah Butler Highway, there were still persons, despite our strongest pleas not to take risks, there were still persons who were using the back road, and that is around 12 noon, 1 o'clock this morning, and they became trapped. These back roads are underwater still, even though the water was subsiding. What I saw at 12 o'clock noon today, and just flying over at about 3:45, the water had started to rise again because, of course, we're facing a high tide. There was some rain experience this afternoon along a northern range. People are still taking unnecessary risks and venturing in their vehicles out on secondary roads that are water affected. Please, I'm pleading with you, and I'm seeing it all over the country because we flew south from Greenville. I then flew to Sandy Granny. I'm happy to say that the water had subsided in areas of Sandy Granny, but now it's a mammoth task. The cleaning up task I saw that was taking place across the country. Persons are going to need our help. We're going to continue getting different types of supplies now to persons. We're going to continue getting the drinking water, even the bleach, the other cleanup items, all our hygiene items, etc., to those who are in need. We are doing the best that we can. I've seen the members, even of the regional corporations there, to be thanked, ODPM, trying to get the resources to those who are in need. Whether over the next 24 to 48 hours, we have been informed by the Met Office that we can expect overnight to experience some more unusual weather. I am hoping that it does not hit us the way it hit us on Friday night, etc., but no one can predict this with any level of certainty. At this stage, do not take risks. We have our infrastructure working, we have our responders out, we have our shelters up, and shelters have been provided with supplies during the course of the day. I had a certain incident down in Mafikin when I went to Mafikin down in the Mayaro area where certain persons are still underwater. I can tell you that the Manzanilla stretch of road, there are kilometers of road that are still underwater. I saw the high tide up, I saw the water on the opposite side of the road, and they are going to continue to be underwater. So please do not try to make your way along the Manzanilla roadway. Sorry, let me not leave the Uriah Butler Highway. The southbound lane of the Uriah Butler Highway continues in certain stretches between Monroe Road and
all the way down to
the Caroni Bridge, and the Caroni area continues to be completely underwater. And what I've seen of the Caroni Plains, it will probably continue to be underwater for the next 24 to 48 hours. Thereafter, an assessment of the road will have to be done. On the northern lane, there are 3 lanes that are not underwater. There's one stretch that is still facing quite a bit of water on the northern lane, and it narrows down now to using the shoulder, maybe 2 lanes if we're able. That continues. I just flew over, and it continues to be in that state. The police are on hand. There are lanes of traffic heading south, and one heading north, and that will switch depending on the time of day and the type of traffic. At this stage, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has taken a decision that tomorrow there is not going to be a national shutdown. There are certain areas of Trinidad and Tobago that are still being affected that we will continue to do work on. But we need our citizens who can get to work to continue along their daily lives to do so. I understand that there was some flooding that took place, in the Diego Martin and other areas, in Highland Park and other areas. We have been experiencing this over the past few months. Our regional corporations, first responders, Ministry of Works and others will get there to assist in the cleanup, etc. So I repeat, at this stage, there is no national shutdown of Trinidad and Tobago taking place tomorrow. Persons, however, are urged to exercise extreme caution, especially coming up the Uriah Butler Highway. Please exert extreme caution. Also on the secondary roads, don't take unnecessary risks. We've been pleading with you not to do so. Even this evening, flying back this afternoon, I still saw persons heading into flood-prone areas where the roads were under deep water. We ask our citizens to exercise extreme care and caution. The Ministry of Energy has put out a notification of certain schools being closed. Some of those schools are currently being used as shelters. Ministry of Education has asked that certain schools be shut down. Those schools currently in use as shelters are the Azure Girls College in Charleville, the La Joqueta South Government Primary School, the La Joqueta North Government Primary School, St. David's RC Primary School, the Monroe Road SDMS Primary School, the Madras Government Primary School, Las Lomas Government Primary School, Ragunanan Road Government Primary School. There are others that are closed as a result of adverse weather. These are the other schools that are closed tomorrow. The Durham SDMS Primary School, the Blanchisseuse Secondary School, La Fillette RC Primary School, Warrenville Presbyterian Primary School, Warrenville TIA Primary School, Caroni Presbyterian Primary School, St. Helena Presbyterian Primary School, St. Helena SDMS Primary School, Todd's Road RC Primary School, Caroni SDMS Primary School, North Oropouche RC Primary School, the Conapo St. Francis RC Primary School, Valencia South Government Primary School, North Oropouche Government Primary School, San Rafael RC Primary School. This list, I'm sure by now, has been shared with the members of the media. It will be shared over the various social media platforms. We'll get that word out. There is no shutdown tomorrow. Coming back this afternoon, we saw that the tide had risen, that there were some roads that appeared to be going back. For example, the Caroni Plains, they are still underwater, etc. So please exercise extreme care. Our protective services continue to work overtime. I commend them for doing it. As I said, there were a number of volunteers out there. I commend them as well. We will continue to monitor the situation. I have heard complaints during the course of the day that we have not been in certain areas. That is not necessarily true, but we cannot be everywhere. We've flown over the St. Helena. We've also been in Kelly Village and other areas. I've heard about Las Lomas. We went over Las Lomas to do the monitoring, etc. Even the Madras Road yesterday, we were there. Some of these areas have been difficult to get to. The first responders in these instances are the municipal corporations. I am using this opportunity now to plead with all of the members of the municipal corporations who are giving the resources to, resources as simple as cases of water, toilet paper, non-perishable food items. I am pleading with you, please do not play politics at this time. I saw it firsthand today, and it was very upsetting. At this time and at all times, every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, let us help them. Let us help those who are most in need. And it is easy to assess where the prioritization of giving these food items, these water help, is to some of our citizens. The shelters remain open. We continue to funnel resources into these shelters. I actually smile. I saw some of them. They're being provided with Wi-Fi and internet connection. We will continue to do all that we can. The government is out there. We've continued to be out there. We will continue working with those who have the responsibility to be the first responders, the rescuers, the cleanup crews. We are prioritizing now in certain areas the next step, which will be cleanup, the assessment. The Ministry of Social Development is going to get officers out as soon as possible, hopefully during the course of tomorrow, to start doing those assessments. People in Grenville and other areas were asking me, should they put their appliances outside? Should they leave them where they are? I advise them, if they're doing the cleanup exercise, really it would not be livable for them to continue to having these appliances, because I saw it firsthand in their living areas. I advise them to find secure areas, either inside or right outside, and to put them there until they can be assessment. I ask the officers who are going out to do these assessments to have empathy, to have understanding, because these people have been through very traumatic experiences. And we as a country will continue to do the best that we can to support them in whatever areas we can. I think at this stage, that is what I'd like to address. I'll put us across now to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Minister Young. Good afternoon, all members of the media and all the viewers at this time. Just to give a update on the infrastructure as far as the Ministry of Works and Transport, we did do an aerial view this morning with certain members of the ministry, the directors. We also had with us the disaster coordinator from the Ministry of Rural Development, and I think 2 members of the media. The reason for that flyover was basically to assess some of our infrastructure, some of the areas that was underwater. Most of the areas that we visited, the water had receded significantly. However, there was still some areas that posed some challenges. We then put the team on the ground to do a sort of visual inspection of some of the infrastructure, the bridges and so, because you recognize that a lot of our bridges would have taken some serious pounding over the last couple of days. So far, we have no reports of any infrastructural damage to any of the bridges, and so we do have some infringement on some of the water courses. We were able to identify on the Caroni area several, on the Guayma, several breaches on the banks. The ministry will, as soon as we can go in and have these breaches repaired, that will happen. We identify the rivers that we have to get in as early as tomorrow morning to clear some of them, because there is some room now in the water courses that we can get equipment in. However, one of our biggest challenge will remain the Solomon Huchoy Highway, because as much as we have seen some of the water at least getting to levels where the cars can pass. Sorry, the Uriah Butler Highway, sorry. The Uriah Butler, we are actually seeing cars, based on the forecast of the weather, if it happens the way that some of the officers would have predicted, we do see a challenge there tomorrow. That is something that we'll be monitoring. There have been some instances of road paving damages on that highway, and that will only be able to be repaired once the entire highway is cleared. So what we ask is that motorists need to proceed with caution on the highway, and what we recognize happening today is that where there's supposed to be 2 lanes going down and 1 lane coming up, people were actually, not recognizing the fact that we need law and order if we have to use that 1 lane of the highway to have both a northbound and a southbound. So what we are asking the commuters is let us please understand that we do have some challenges on our roadway at this time. The secondary roads are not an option coming out of San Fernando, because these are located in the very low-lying areas, and those would be the last area for water to run off. So if you have to use the highway, please proceed in an orderly manner. The public service transportation today would have put in a shuttle service from Port of Spain to San Fernando. We intend to continue that tomorrow to ensure that people who prefer to leave their cars at home will use the PTSC service. We would try to put as much buses from Port of Spain to San Fernando to Port of Spain, to at least assist with the traveling public, that we can take some of the cars off the road if you have to commute on that highway. Again, the ministry, the team will be out. They were out today whole day. I expect some of them to be out tonight. We do have some flooding in the Diego Martin, Maraval area. The team is on the ground already up there, and we expect to have that cleared up in a short while once the rain give us some time there. And by tomorrow, we hopefully, with no additional rainfall, we should start to see life back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. What I'd just like to add to what Minister Sinanan has said, because he's right, and I just saw it. There are commuters who are breaking the lines of traffic. By doing that, you're not only putting yourself and your passengers in danger, but you're putting the oncoming traffic, them in danger as well. Having seen exactly what Minister Sinanan just described about 25 minutes ago, I have requested that the Commissioner of Police consider additional resources on that stretch. But honestly, we can't always expect the police to be policing that type of behavior. We ask persons to please just follow the law. We are all stuck in traffic. We are all heading the same way. You don't need to break the lines of traffic, put additional people in danger. One of the areas I forgot to also talk about, and Minister Sinanan just triggered my memory, the Southern Main Road is also underwater at significant portions. So the Southern Main Road is not an alternative at this stage to the Uriah Butler Highway as a passageway. So people, once again, please exercise extreme caution. Do not take unnecessary risks. And we will continue to do all that we can whilst we're hoping that the weather holds up. There is now the exercise of cleanup. I can assure persons that the government is very aware of it. Minister Sinanan has been doing some of the coordination, been speaking to me as well. We are going to do the best we can to get the crews out there to do the cleanup. There's both the heavy cleaning up. In fact, one of the items he was discussing before coming in here is trying to get various rubbish skips in the areas that have been affected, so persons can just put the rubbish in there rather than having trucks going in and out, etc. And when they're full, we'll pick it up and take it out. We know there are issues with water and getting enough water into some of these areas to help and assist in the clean out. I would like to end by just once again, because I think it's important enough to emphasize, thank you to all of the citizens who have come out and are helping, our men and women in the police service, in the defense force, in ODPM, in the regional corporations, our fire service, our prison service, Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rural Development, the social services, the health sector, under the Minister of Health, all of the various people, and I'm certain I may have forgotten some, and that is not intentional. So I'll conclude it by just saying thank you, all citizens, for the help and assistance you have been providing to our brothers and sisters who are most in need over the past 24 and 48 hours. We in the government, along with the persons charged with the responsibility and duty, will continue to monitor what is taking place, and we'll continue to push resources as hard as we can to get life back to normal. But it is going to take some time for those who are heavily affected to get life back to normal. We are aware, and we will continue to provide as much support as we can. Thank you. We'll take a few questions.
I understand that you said there will be no national. Minister Stuart, I understand that you said there will be no national shutdown tomorrow, and we do understand that thousands of people were not affected by the flood.
Just hold it up a little.
There are thousands of people who were not affected by the flood.
Go on, I'm hearing you.
Check. However, these same people have to traverse the Uriah Butler Highway, and that is an area of grave concern at this point in time. What would you suggest to those people who have not been affected by the flood but need to come into Port of Spain to work if there's no shutdown?
That obviously was one of the considerations that we had to make. As you say, thousands of people have not been infected. I mean, it's much more than thousands. It's hundreds of thousands have not been affected. At the end of the day, we ask people to just exercise your common sense and exercise caution. I am sure coming out in the morning, it will be the opposite. There will be 2 lanes of traffic once the road permits, coming out of south up to north. The truth is, it's a small stretch of highway. When I say small, I estimate it to be a couple kilometers. It's maybe a bit more than a couple kilometers. We're going to have the police there to try and assist as much as possible. Once persons follow the law, follow order, we will get there. Persons may leave earlier, persons may leave later. At the end of the day, it's going to be every individual's call. If you know you're traveling up and it's just you in your car, but you have neighbors, etc., going in the same direction, less carpool. The truth is, right now, we're dealing with some unusual circumstances. We cannot shut down the whole country at the current point in time. That's our current assessment. Because there are many, many knock-on effects of taking such a decision. So just exercise common sense, logic, carpool, and people don't break the law. Just stay in your lines and move forward as much as possible. That's all I can say at this stage. Jewel. At this stage, the water taxi will be up and running, but at this stage we don't have additional water taxis that we can utilize and get it running. But the water taxi service will do its part and this type of thing. We did consider and look at during the course of the day, but we don't have additional resources in that area right now.
Minister, a couple of things. In your consideration, the Cabinet's consideration for not having a national shutdown tomorrow, as you said, there are people who are affected, but there are others who have not been. Was any consideration given to, say, a school holiday? And in doing that, that might ease up some of the traffic and not expose, let's say, school children, students, to the potential risks that you spoke of?
All I can say at this stage is there was consideration given to a lot of different factors, and it always comes down to a balancing exercise. To answer that frontally, the answer is yes. One of the alternative submissions you hear to what you've just said is what that then does is it puts pressure on parents, because parents then have to stay home with the children, etc. At this stage, this was the assessment that was made, this was the decision that was made, and that's the decision. I mean, if things change, then fine, but at this stage, on the current circumstances, that's the decision, and yes, consideration was given to that. At the end of the day, it's every citizen's choice and decision as to what they do, and we're asking people to come out and to do the work, and especially in those areas and those persons who will be counting on to assist in helping those who are in need.
What about the concern of those, if they want to go to work, may not be able to do so? I mean, there may be a situation of many people who just, there are some offices or government ministries and so on, where people, even if they want to, just cannot go to work tomorrow.
And we understand that. I mean, we've done the survey, we've done the assessment. There are still some persons who are dealing with high water issues and persons who are dealing with cleanup, etc. But the rest of the country goes on. Part of the reason we want to do this is to help those persons, to ensure that the rest of us who can get to what we need to be doing, we do it, and we assist those, and we just keep things running.
There is an issue of persons, criminal elements taking advantage of areas where flooding has occurred. So what steps are being taken, other than what you may have mentioned, in terms of ensuring that the areas that have been flooded, where people have been rescued, they may be in shelters, they are not at their homes, that those areas are secured, patrols or otherwise, so that that situation does not continue?
As I said, I spoke to the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Defence Staff. I've asked for additional resources to be put in those areas. Some of the communities, like for example, when I was in Greenville, they will do what they can as well. The La Joqueta police station is right there. I have asked for more resources to be put on the ground. There has been the return of some electricity, so that should help in itself. Walking door to door through that particular community today, persons are getting back into their homes and their houses, so that too will help. We're doing all that we can, and at the end of the day, we have to count on our law enforcement officers. But they themselves, I just ask persons to just abide by law, but we have asked for more resources in those areas, Joe.
Is the government, has it done a review thus far to determine whether the response, the initial response, was enough? Because you did hear some complaints of people saying that they were waiting to be rescued or needed help and it took too long.
The assessment at a high level is going to take place once we've gotten through all of this. We're not going to break now to say, okay, let's assess. There can always be room for improvement, but as I explained to people today, when you were there and you're facing this thing frontally, understand that one of the first decisions, you had to shut off electricity. Again, to use the Greenvale area as an example. First responders who were there on the ground, Minister Sinanan can attest, he was there. They don't know the area. So you just picture yourself being put on the ground, water above your head, you're being given a dinghy, another flat bottom craft, and said, let's go in there and try and rescue people. You have to proceed very cautiously. Every person would be facing their own dilemma and their own difficulties. I believe our first responders got to them once they were there on the ground as quickly as we could with the resources we had. We will look at increasing resources at the end of all of this. You learn from these types of circumstances. But I think I don't want to take away from the great and commendable work that our personnel did in getting to people eventually. And I'd like to say it also slipped me at the beginning. I asked for confirmation just before coming to this press conference. And at this stage, knock on wood, there continue to be no reports of any fatalities. I'm hoping it stays that way.
As you speak of the first responders, of course, the state's different programs and mechanisms, of course, would be in place to help all of those who would be in need, I would imagine. But in terms of first responders, police, firefighters, those in the defense force, prisons officers whose homes were affected, some of whom couldn't even go to work, some of them had to be rescued. Does the state have anything to ensure that they are taken care of?
They're not going to be treated any differently from the rest of our citizens. And you're right, because today I met with many men and women in our protective services, in the Coast Guard, in the Defense Force, prisons, the police, etc. And I saw firsthand how they had been affected. Each of those arms, the police service, etc. So last night, when I left here, I went with the Commissioner of Police for him. He was launching some new vehicles, etc., to get more vehicles out on the road. He told me that he has some initiatives in place that he's going to take to the Police Social and Welfare Executive and others. I expect each of those agencies, they're going to pull together because they all are tight-knitted communities. I expect each of them to pull together to help the men and women, their fellow colleagues, and I saw some of that firsthand today where their fellow officers came out and were helping them. The government is going to do all it can, as you all heard the Prime Minister say here last night, to assist those who are in need, and that would include our protective services.
Minister, will government give consideration to closing government offices earlier tomorrow to help with the afternoon congestion?
That is something that I'm sure that we will discuss and we'll take a look at. But I can't make that decision at this, and it's not my decision to make either. All right? Yes, Jules?
I apologize.
No.
I want to pose just two questions to the Works Minister. One, in terms of the situation with the flooding we've seen, like, for example, Uriah Butler Highway and so on, related to issues, I would imagine, with the Caroni River and whatnot. This is not the first time this has happened. This may be one of the most severe examples of it. Can anything be done to deal with that issue, not just there, but in other areas in terms of drainage?
Okay, Jules, you're quite correct. This is not the first time, but at this time it has been severe. Everything has to do with engineering and the capacity of your channels and the volume of the rainfall. We do have, Cabinet did approve a project in 2018 for the rebuilding of the banks in the Caroni River. So that project I think is out for tender now as we speak for the rehabilitation of the Caroni River banks. What that entails is actually raising the bank, because the channels now, the volume of water in the channels are just way more than the channels can handle. And by raising the bank a little, give us a little more capacity. However, if you have excessive rain and the channels cannot handle it, and you have a high tide, you will get spillover. Most of the water coming in on the highway came from the Caroni River, and that is because the channels were filled. You had high tides, the planes were filled and the water just started to spill onto the highway at the lowest point. And that is why you'd have some water at one point, then you have a clear highway, and then you have the low point again, more water there. So this is just something that, you know, you might be able to engineer for a certain volume of water. What if we got, 265 millimeters of rain? You can engineer for that. And if you get 300, then what? You'd engineer for 300, then next time I get 450. So everything has to do with, and engineering has a challenge. Most of the developed countries, they do have flooding. Again, it's because of the capacity that you cater for. This was not a normal. We got a month rainfall in 3 days. There's no way you could engineer for that.
We had visited TV6 there just a short time ago, a situation of a landslide affecting 2 homes just bordering the St. Peter's Gardens area and Upper School Street.
I do have a report on that. I do have the technical people up there. There's a little challenge with it because if you visit, you realize they cleared some. If they clear any more, it will bring a house that is on top of the landscape, will bring it down. So they have to be very careful because we must remember the soil is very saturated at this point in time. So some people would think you just go in and just clear it out. The challenge with that is if you just go and clear that out, you could create a bigger problem at the top. So the engineers are looking at it as we speak. We have equipment heading up to that landslip, and something will be done.
One of their complaints was that they just weren't getting enough of a response from the authorities they contacted.
Again, we talk about response, and as members of the media, you have to be a little bit careful, especially when, you know, people are under pressure. And so I got that report long before you got it. And I got a technical evaluation that said, look, we just can't go in and just start to deal with it like that. One, we have to get the people out of their homes. And I think you would realize that I don't think the people even want to leave their home. So we have to be careful how we deal. I just came out from Bamboo 2, where I got a report that the pumps were not working and things like that. When I went in, the pumps were working. Actually, we had an additional pump, but somebody told somebody out there that the pump not working. And by the time I got in there with the technical people, they said, but not only one pump, there are 2 pumps, and both of them working. So, you know, sometimes we need to leave some of these to the professionals and be guided by them. I'm not an engineer, I've always made that clear, but I'm guided by the technical people at the ministry.
Minister, is the Prime Minister out in the field today? I know he was out in the field yesterday, Minister Young.
The Prime Minister has been very, very busy today. He continues to get a lot of reports from all of his ministers who are involved in these operations. I've spoken to him a couple times during the course of the day just to give him the briefings and the updates. And he is still there very much in his chair guiding us and telling us what he wants done and encouraging us and supporting us and ultimately making some decisions. I'd just like to use this opportunity. It just came through from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Motorists are advised to proceed with extreme caution as flood waters have not as yet completely subsided. The point I was making a short while ago. Parts of St. Helena, Kelly Village, Warner Village, Madras still remain underwater and are completely impassable at this time. I have seen that firsthand. So I'd like to end by just encouraging people, please exercise extreme caution and don't take unnecessary risk. We continue to do all that we can. We will continue to deploy the resources that we have. Understand as the passage of time goes on, persons start to get more tired, they'll need to be replaced, these types of difficulties. And thank you. Thank you, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, for the tremendous work and support that you all have been giving. And we will continue to do all that we can from our end. Thank you all very much.